Welcome into the Talkin Tide podcast on the Reier on YouTube channel. I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News with Travis Reier. Again, the Talkin Tide podcast available at Reier on YouTube. Lots of other really neat content on that YouTube channel as well. Be sure to give it a like and a subscribe. With you this evening in between a win over Mercer and an upcoming game against the OU Sooners for the Crimson Tide, Travis, Alabama. Of course, steaming into their final two games of the regular season at 8-2 on the year. CFP in the news. Obviously, we'll break down this Alabama-Oklahoma game, take a look at a couple games around the league as well, like we always do. But Travis, we kind of tipped it off last week, diving into the CFP. Kind of got to do it again. With what transpired with these rankings. I know nothing's, everything's up in the air till the end. I get it. But boy, Georgia hopping mad, Travis, sitting there at 10 after a win over Tennessee. You got to wonder what message is the committee sending to Georgia. And if you listen to Kirby Smart's comments this week, he sounds like a guy who's had it with this committee 2 years in a row.
Yeah, well, it feels like you're almost better off just not playing much of a schedule if you can help it. Now, look, for Kirby, I don't feel as bad for him prior to this year because Georgia benefited greatly from being in the SEC East. And what Kirby got this year was an SEC West schedule. That's what Kirby got.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, it looks like there's not much of an eye test, I guess, in all this. It almost feels like, okay, you have no losses. You have one loss. Now, Alabama's up there pretty good relative to what we're seeing from this committee for a two-loss team, for sure. But I think a month ago, most of us thought two-loss SEC teams be in pretty good shape, almost givens to make this 12-team field. Now, you're right. Who knows exactly what this committee's looking for? And Kirby pretty much echoed that.
Yeah, I totally get, you got to look at head-to-head and all this if you're the committee. They're looking at all kinds of factors. Odd, though, I thought, and again, Alabama beat Georgia head-to-head. You got to understand Alabama being ahead of Georgia for that reason, both sitting with a couple of losses. But it's a head-scratcher to me, Travis, that Alabama beats Mercer and jumps 3 spots. Yeah. Georgia beats Tennessee, jumps 2 spots. That seems a little incongruous. Does it not?
It does, and it felt like Tennessee paid a pretty good price for losing on the road to a good Georgia team after beating Alabama. Look, this is kind of the situation a lot of people wanted to see in some ways as we got down the home stretch of this season. And all you can really say at this point is there's still 2 weekends of football left to be played. And we've been in situations like this, even with a 2-team BCS, and thought, right, oh, we know exactly how this is going to play out with the 2 teams.
You don't.
And it did not. So, we'll probably talk a little bit about this weekend in the SEC, I'm sure, beyond Alabama and Oklahoma. But Alabama's got a game similar to what Ole Miss has this weekend.
Right.
And similar to what Texas A&M has this weekend. So for those 3 teams that are still in this mix for the college football playoff, I wouldn't take anything for granted going into these games Saturday.
A lot can happen these last 2 weeks. I would not be stunned if Auburn hangs with A&M. I'm not going to be stunned if Oklahoma hangs with Alabama at home. I mean, a lot can happen here. But as we get into this Alabama-Oklahoma game, Travis, the Crimson Tide on its way to Norman. Last played Oklahoma, I believe, in a Sugar Bowl, but last visit to Norman, certainly before that. Oklahoma 5-5 on the year. Rough go in conference play. I think they've just won 1 conference game to this point. But Alabama looking to go in there and taking care of business. Oklahoma, you think, is almost looking at this like half a bowl game, right? I mean, they got to win another one anyway just to be eligible. This is a spoiler opportunity for a proud program.
It really is. And it's one of those moments. It's going to be a senior night in Norman. Night game. We'll see. I think it all goes back to the start of this game Saturday night. If Alabama is able to take command early like it did in Baton Rouge, I like the chances for Alabama because Oklahoma offensively has just been a mess all season long. Changing quarterbacks, going from Jackson Arnold, who most folks thought is a former 5-star, might even be a step up, from what we had seen with Dylan Gabriel. I mean, you consider that thought now, 10, 11 games into the season, it's kind of a head shaker, head scratcher. But they've gone to Michael Hawkins. So exactly what is Alabama defensively going to see from this Oklahoma offense on Saturday night? Offensive coordinator was fired during the season. It's been rough on that side of the ball. But Oklahoma defensively, they can do enough, especially against the run, to maybe put Alabama outside of its comfort zone, maybe at some point in this game.
Yeah, Oklahoma's defense has really held it together, and the offense has put it in some terrible spots this year. I mean, if you consider as much football as the defense has had to play at Oklahoma this year, just in terms of snap count, and also getting put behind the 8 ball with turnovers and whatnot, field position woes, this defense is only given up 319 yards per game. That ranks 24th in the NCAA. It's as good as you can ask for with an offense doing as little as this Oklahoma offense. Scoring defense, 21.9 points per game. Darn good in this day and age of college football, Travis. Again, with no help from the offense. Danny Stutzman, kind of the main guy at that Mike position for Oklahoma. What do you think? Do you put Stutzman in the big-time talent category, Travis, or more of the gutty heart and soul type guy?
Somewhere in between, I would say, for Danny Stutzman. Wouldn't surprise me if he sticks in the league for some time, but I wouldn't say he's Jahad Campbell in terms of that kind of upside. Just in terms of a college linebacker, you'd love to have Danny Stutzman.
Yeah.
Give me a couple of them. But they're pretty good right up the middle of that defense, especially when you talk about the safety positions with Billy Bowman and also Peyton Bowen. So they've got some guys with some star power on the defensive side. Again, the offensive line was a major question mark for Oklahoma. It almost felt like Oklahoma didn't quite get the memo about going into the SEC. You can't be not good along your offensive line in this league. And then some things that Oklahoma couldn't control necessarily with the injuries at wide receiver, which I have no doubt stunted the growth of Arnold in that offense in general. It's been an imperfect mix for OU on the offensive side, but you've said it, the defense has given this team more than a few chances to win games.
Yeah, the offensive line, what a sore spot for OU. They've tried 7 different starting combinations up front in 10 games. They lost all 5 starters from 2023. They brought in 4 guys out of the portal. One of them is out for the year with an injury. A couple others haven't worked out. Pretty much tried to patch together a starting line through the portal, Travis, which is not a good recipe.
It isn't.
Yeah.
And it's why a program like Oklahoma going into the next to last weekend in November, Chase, is still in search of its first home win as a member of the Southeastern Conference in league play. That's crazy when you think about it. But look, South Carolina, the last team to go in there as a visitor in the league and just absolutely, took the Sooners apart. But it's been a while since we've seen the Sooners at home in league play. Went to Mississippi. That was a respectable performance, I thought, a 26-14 loss to Ole Miss. And that was kind of what we're talking about. The defense plays well enough. I mean, you hold Ole Miss to 26.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good. But then just inexplicable finish at Missouri a couple weekends ago.
They gave up. Now, this OU offensive line has allowed an NCAA FBS high 41 sacks in 10 games. Travis, 18 of the 41, so relatively close to half, come in the form of 9 each to Ole Miss and South Carolina.
Yeah.
Oof.
So, and this is an Alabama defense that we think is cresting at the right time, given their most recent performances. So if that's the case, even if you find yourself in sort of a rock fight Saturday night with Oklahoma, which is really stylistically what Oklahoma needs is to kind of be like the Vanderbilt game was for Alabama. Maybe score on defense, hold the football, possess it, keep the Alabama offense off the field with a combination of sustained drives and that Oklahoma defense doing a good job, and then have a chance there in the fourth quarter to get it done.
What about Jackson Arnold? Is he a guy that goes wire to wire in this game, Travis, or do you think maybe we see some Michael Hawkins? I get the sense that maybe OU is going to turn back to Hawkins in this one. Who knows? They've been a little bit back and forth. Kane Womack asked about the issues with maybe preparing for both of them in practice. He had what I thought was a pretty interesting comment about it. He said, look, they run the same plays with both of them, but they do have different skill sets. And what that says to me, Travis, is that, just because they might be running the same plays doesn't mean you want to make the same defensive calls with both of them, right? Because because you may want to make different calls depending on which one's in the game. Jackson Arnold obviously is taking the job back, but the way OU struggled, who knows, Travis? Maybe they throw Hawkins in there again.
Again, it kind of goes back to the Vanderbilt comp for OU, maybe as a blueprint this week. Maybe Michael Hawkins gives you some more Diego. Yeah. The difference is Diego takes care of the football. For all of the highlight plays we see from Diego Pavia, he's pretty much been clean in terms of turning the football over. The last time we saw Michael Hawkins in a start, that's the reason why Oklahoma got so far behind South Carolina in that home game. It was brutal.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't go as far as to say Jackson Arnold necessarily took the job back. Michael Hawkins kind of said, here it is. You give it a shot again, Jackson. And I do agree with Kane Womack in watching Jackson Arnold and Hawkins in this Oklahoma offense at times this season. They'll run Jackson Arnold. They got him going on some design runs in that game against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
But no doubt, it's a different type of runner. It's not as much make you miss with Jackson Arnold. It's more make a cut, get downhill. And, if we're being honest, when you don't really have a starter at quarterback, probably as an offensive coordinator, you're not as worried as much about exposing whoever's out there to hits, right, because you don't have a guy. So you might as well run them both.
If you're Alabama and you see some Hawkins, you're Kane Womack, do you maybe play a little more zone against Hawkins just so you got more eyes on him in case he tucks? Is that maybe part of the thinking?
I think it could be. They like to play some zone anyway. So, and just switch it up on him too, because he has shown a bit of a propensity to turn the football over if it's a little clouded to him, maybe he'll do that. He's still a young quarterback too, Michael Hawkins. I mean, if we're being fair, he was thrown into a pretty tough situation. There was a lot of hope for Oklahoma after that win at Auburn early in the season, but that was a game that essentially Auburn gave away there late too. So right, it's just never really happened for this Oklahoma offense. I think Oklahoma has to have some semblance of a run game, because we just don't know the situation at receiver, where there's just been a multitude of injuries. Key guys have been out. And that makes it tougher too, because, if Alabama can hit some explosive plays, and I think Oklahoma first and foremost is going to be keyed up on that Alabama run game. And because of that, I think Alabama is going to have some opportunities down the field early in the game. And they just missed on a couple of those, right? In the last couple of games, just missed Caleb Odom against Mercer. Ryan Williams and Jalen were just a little bit off in the downpour at LSU. So this wouldn't be a bad week to sort of get reacquainted with those throws.
The Vegas man, Travis, weighing in on the Crimson Tide against the OU Sooners. Alabama favorite at this point, as we record, by 13.5 in most places. That's down from 14.5 earlier in the week. I've seen the over-under in the neighborhood of 47.5, 48. It's too many points to me, Travis, from a spread standpoint. I like Alabama to win. 14's a lot.
That's a lot of points. You know what this game kind of feels like it's replaced too, Chase? And even from a standpoint in some years, that line that you just threw out there, This feels like Mississippi State on the road in November's past, right? Remember,
Right.
this is kind of what it feels like. This feels like Norman instead of Starkville, OU instead of Mississippi State. Now, Oklahoma fans don't want to hear that comp. We are not Mississippi State. And
No.
I get it. I understand the championships and all that. A little bit different, but it has that type of feel to it where
it's because of the offense-defense dynamic.
Mississippi State could ugly it up, right? And you get out of there 24-7 or something,
right.
24-12, something ugly. And look, if you're Alabama at this point with 2 regular seasons to go and your college football playoff fate in the balance, you're fine with that too.
Yeah, no question about it. Little roster news as well. Keon Sabb confirmed out for the year when Sabb first went out for good in the Tennessee game. Kalen DeBoer came back and said he's going to be down for a while, is how he put it. Didn't say for the year for sure. He has said this past week, no more Keon Sabb, which locks Bray Hubbard into the starting lineup for the duration, Travis, and who's performed really well, too, by the way. 2 picks and 2 starts. Can't ask for more than that. He's been a sure tackler. I like what we've seen from Bray Hubbard at the safety position. Keanu Coate announces he's entering the transfer portal. No surprise there. A guy who's been under suspension for the last couple of games. But Bray Hubbard locked in now, Travis.
Yeah, and he has been very, very impressive. Looks like a guy that was ready for that opportunity when he got it, when Sabb went down, and doesn't look like Sabb or no Sabb at this point, you're going to figure out a way to get Bray Hubbard involved on the defensive side. Now, it's kind of hard because, as we talked about, they don't play dime. So, there would be some things that you could do with 6 defensive backs if you had Sabb and also Bray Hubbard to go along with Malachi. But, depth becomes a bit of a concern, right? Because now who's your next safety? Who's your next guy up? I think some fans look at it and go, well, Hubbard's playing so great. Well, it does matter because now if you get one of those 2 guys hurt at a critical juncture in the season, who's going to be that next guy, Chase?
Right. Maybe one reason Mincy's getting looks over there at safety now as well.
Devontae Smith can play some safety if he needs to. You've got some guys, Cameron Howard. So
Mac.
Yep. King Mac for sure.
SEC scores to take a look at, Travis. Let's do this, Travis, before we close out the show. I'll throw out 2 scores from this past week and 2 games we're looking forward to this weekend. You just, out of these 4, you tell me what grabs you the most, and we'll get started. All right, 2 scores from this past week. Georgia 31, Tennessee 17. Huge one there, obviously. And South Carolina 34-30 over Missouri. Missouri officially bows out of the CFP hunt with their 3rd loss, even though I think that was pretty much a foregone conclusion anyway. 2 games to look ahead on, obviously. A&M at Auburn, one to watch. Also, Missouri at Mississippi State. Somewhat tangible for Alabama fans because that Missouri game, if they happen to lose in Starkville, which I think is unlikely, then that keeps the door open for Alabama to not reach the SEC title game if they win out. So what about it, Travis? What are you latching on to out of all that?
Gosh, I guess, looking back, Georgia being down 10-0.
Yeah.
And coming back, look, the game was in Athens and Georgia has absolutely owned the balls. So you didn't sense there was a lot of panic, but there was a point there in the second quarter where you were at least starting to wonder maybe 10 was going to be enough for Tennessee against that Georgia offense because it continued to be a struggle for the Dogs. And then it felt like it just went on for Carson Beck. And he hits Dom Lovett on a crossing route for an explosive play. That went a long way in feeling like anyway that it triggered that Georgia offense. So has the Georgia offense awakened to the point where consistently you can expect it from the Dogs on that side of the ball? Because Georgia Tech in a couple Saturdays may not be a gimme for Georgia. I thought, we'll talk about South Carolina and this sort of semi-improbable run this season with Lenore Sellers and how that team has really grown up with him behind center. I'll give Missouri credit. We have some fun with Drinkwitz here on the program. We have referred to him as DG Spurrier. Discount Steve Spurrier. But
and Coach Rabbit Ears.
Yes, Coach Rabbit Ears. But I'll say this for his team. I thought that game was going to get really ugly at 21-6. Next thing I know, Missouri's in the lead, and South Carolina's having to save itself there with about 15 seconds to go on a little shovel pass to Rocket Sanders to win the game. That was a heck of a game. But yeah, I mean, when you think about scenarios and combinations for how all this might play out, just for Atlanta, if you don't have a sort of personal accountant, this would maybe not be the worst time to enlist the services of one.
How damaging is this loss for Tennessee in terms of the postseason, Travis? I mean, Tennessee, it looks like now, could very easily be an SEC team left out in the cold in the playoff with the way things are sitting now. Maybe not. Maybe they end up getting in, but Tennessee went from being in great shape to questionable shape in one Saturday.
I think the loss at Arkansas is the one that Tennessee will actually look back on. Kind of like if Alabama doesn't get in, it's going to look back at Vanderbilt. I mean, you aren't going to have to go far. The Tennessee loss was disappointing, but losing at Vanderbilt, if ultimately Alabama doesn't get in, that's where you're going to point back to. And kind of like Arkansas, I mean, Vanderbilt's not a bad team by Vanderbilt standards. Vanderbilt's great this year.
Right.
Arkansas with a win this week's going to be a bowl team. That was a road loss. But road is tough, man. You look at the teams with 2 losses right now and look at their losses. Georgia, 2 losses, both of them on the road. Alabama, 2 losses, both of them on the road. You look at Tennessee, 2 losses, both of them on the road. Tough league to win on the road, man.
Speaking of which, A&M at Auburn on Saturday. Could the Tigers have something for A&M at Jordan-Hare? I said it at the top of the show. I'm not going to be shocked if Auburn uglies that one up and drags A&M into low-scoring slugfest.
I've got trust issues with Auburn, though. I know the Tigers pummeled ULM in a feel-good victory last Saturday. Peyton Thorne with a big day, Jarquez Hunter with a big day, the young receivers with a big day. Kind of felt like I saw this from Auburn at Kentucky a few weeks ago, and then turned right around and it didn't equate to really anything. That sort of random performance. Jarquez Hunter just went off up there at UK. So I've got some trust issues. I will say this, though, and we talked about this earlier in the show. Between Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Auburn, Ole Miss, Florida, I don't think the 3 road favorites all get through Saturday unscathed. I think one of those 3 is going to lose on Saturday. And right now, if I was going to rank them in likelihood, I would probably have Texas A&M by just a little bit at the top of that list.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Florida could pull it off. OU, Auburn, Ole Miss seems like they're riding pretty high right now. But, Florida's – and look, I know Florida just got mashed by Texas. That Texas game was ugly for Florida. But I still think Florida's showing some signs. DJ Lagway is going to be back in the lineup, it looks like, so they're not having to play the Ivy League third stringer who did not work out whatsoever.
The Yale transfer.
Yes. So, Florida could be a little bit dangerous. We'll see. Missouri at Mississippi State. Any chance at all Missouri that Missouri trips here, Travis? They just lost the game that kind of takes all the air out of their sails postseason wise. So, and you know what happens when you get that gut punch in November that really knocks you out of anything but a little bowl game. Sometimes teams pack it in. I don't know. Can Mississippi State hang tough?
I think Mississippi State can hang. I still like Brady Cook, and I like the makeup of, again, they showed me something in coming back. And if Brady Cook is good to go, which he was last week, Theo Weiss, he still got Luther Burden, Nate Noel at the running back position, had a huge game against South Carolina. I just think that state defense could give up a good bit. They've done it all year, given up a lot. And I think Missouri could score in the 30s. And then I think that's a struggle for Mississippi State to sort of match that, even against a Missouri defense that isn't what it was a year ago.
Yeah, Mississippi State's defense has absolutely been awful, no question about it. I do think they might have something with that Van Buren kid at quarterback.
I like Van Buren a lot. I
Yeah.
like him a lot. I've been very impressed with him. He hasn't backed up a step. I mean, and they've been to Tennessee, they've been to Georgia, they've been to Texas. I mean, he's gone into some absolute bowls, man. And from what I've seen anyway, he hasn't shown signs of back down at all.
That's the most that he's the silver lining if you're Jeff Lebby in the whole season, right?
And that's the big one, because that's Jeff Lebby. I mean, he's the offensive guy. He's the guy Oklahoma's probably missing more than anybody this year, running that Oklahoma offense and what they've gone through with the troubles. But yeah, if you're Lebby, you feel good that you've got your quarterback, and then you can kind of go from there here in the offseason. You're going to have to look at that defense and kind of ask yourself, or it's just one season, but you still got to ask yourself, given the performance this year and understanding they're at a real talent deficit on that side of the ball, or do I like where we're headed though over here, with Coleman Hutzler, and is he really the guy to lead that defense moving forward?
It's going to give us a wrap here on the Talkin Tide podcast. For Travis Reier, I am Tuscaloosa News Sports columnist Chase Goodbread. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Reier on YouTube channel, where you can get every episode of Talkin Tide, plenty of other outstanding Alabama athletics content as well. For Travis Reier, I'm Chase Goodbread. We'll talk to you next time right here on Talkin Tide.